guys, look, we're here. We made it out to finally interview Dan Lowe. So we're sitting out here by the fire and we're going to go over a couple things. First, we'll talk about my cannonball because that's awesome and see what Dan thinks about that thing. There it is. And then we'll get into the Mystery Glyphs part of this and see what he has to say about that. But I want to know what my cannonball is, Dan, and how we can tell if it is or isn't.
Well, if you go on any of these websites where you put a picture of something, everybody always jumps on the easiest explanation.
Right.
Okay. And first things everybody's going to say is it's a ball from a mill. But there's some problems with that. A mill ball is going to be round.
Like perfectly round.
This flat spot didn't wear off sitting in the ground. This unevenness here didn't wear off in the ground.
Right.
When you have something like this, and it's this uneven, there's a high probability that this was a projectile.
So it's uneven, but it's still physically kind of round. Like it would still fly out of a cannon just fine.
Yeah. And so this one here, I wouldn't suspect that it's a ball from a mill. And its size is pretty much perfect for a two-man cannon.
So where we found it, there was...
I know it'd hurt like hell if it hit you.
Yes, it would. But I know where we found it. Remember, guys, in the last video, when we found this, there's no ball mill there. This was on the other side of where we went into the mine, and the mine had a stamp mill, which was, stamp mills come down and they just pound the rock, crush it up. And most of the stuff they were getting out of that mine was lead, zinc, and a little bit of gold. A lot of iron, though. But a lot of it was lead. So there's no reason this should be over where we found it. When we were looking for the town, we found this where the last spot I thought it would be. And if you watch my video I shot 2 days ago, so today's Monday, and we did that on Saturday. But if you watch that video, we only found a couple of pieces of trash and some modern bullets up there, right, guys? So there's no reason this would be in, and it was in a ravine, so it could have been fired from a distance, and then eventually the weather and water washed it down into this ditch.
Well, the fact that you've got a small town there and the mining operation and whatever does give the skeptics some credibility, saying that it's a mill ball. And the possibility is always there, but then they would have to explain why it's so uneven. I don't see that.
So nowadays in ball mills, I'm kind of familiar with them. When you start out with these to crush ore, they're bigger. They're like probably the size of a bowling ball, maybe.
Yeah, today.
And when they wear down so small, they just either fall out through what size you're crushing, or they just get rid of them and put new ones in.
And they're still round.
And they're still round because they just sit in there and tumble and roll on the material. So why wouldn't there be a lot more of these? Like if they just were getting rid of them to go back and mill more, you'd probably find a pile of these, I would think.
You would think. Not too far from where you found this, a friend of mine many years ago was hiking along the bottom of a ridge and looked up. I don't know what it was that caused him to go up on top, but they found an old cannon, probably not Spanish. It was made out of iron, and there was a stack of cannonballs right next to it. And we've never made any attempt to go up and see if we could re-find it again, but it's not too far from where this was found.
In the same area, someone's found a cannon before.
Yeah, and we also have the stories of Johnson's army taking their surplus guns, cannons, and whatever, and burying them out there on that side of the lake.
On the west side of the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Why would Johnson's army be that far out though?
Because they didn't want the Mormons to get hold of them.
Oh. So this was back before Utah was even a state.
Yeah.
And so the troops were sent here by the president before the Civil War.
Yeah.
And that's why the troops left, was they had to go back east for the Civil War.
Well, they had to keep things under control here too.
So if you guys want to learn about that, you can totally look up some history on that. That's a real thing. I've been to that fort. It's over there by 5 Mile Pass. So it's right in there by Eagle Mountain. You can look it up.
There's also a site near there where they buried some cannons and some guns that my brother used to tell me about, and he showed me where that's at.
And Dan showed us that there was a railroad there, and me and John didn't do a video, but John found a pocket watch there where the old railroad stop used to be. So if you can find some old railroad maps, you can see right there through 5 Mile Pass. And there's a couple of mines on top, so you're just on the other side of Mercer and Ophir. And remember that word Ophir, because that's going to come into play in later videos, kind of for your thing that I talked about in the last video. So if you're not watching all the videos and you're not keeping up, you're going to have to go back and watch them. That's the trick to this, is to make you guys view them in sequence so you know what's happening. But if you skipped the last video, yes, we did find the lost town. I'm calling it found. Dan does research like crazy, and I put him on that town, and he could not find anything on that town. Zero, right?
No.
No maps?
Just the maps that you had already seen.
See? And so that's crazy to me, that there's no history on that, but it's on a map. But anyway, we found it. So let's talk mystery glyphs. Now that Dan says this is a cannonball, you all heard him sign off. But let's talk mystery glyphs. So when I first met Dan, he would put me on some projects, and then we'd get going. And I believe Terry Carter did a video on these too. If you guys want to check out his channel, I might throw a link in the description below. But there's these mystery glyphs, and Dan sent me pictures of them. Me and John worked on them for probably a week straight, and we were going through different petroglyphs. We were going through different languages, that lost languages, even like Druid, how they wrote magic. They're weird. They're absolutely weird. But this came back up, and I'll tell you how it came back up, because Dan's never heard this story. So I was watching YouTube, and I do not remember the guy whose channel it was, but he was talking about an underground city. And it ventured from like India folklore, and they had their own language, and I can't remember the name of the language, but I'll figure it out and put it in the description below. But he was showing that alphabet next to the Hebrew alphabet and the Egyptian alphabet over to the American alphabet, the English alphabet that we know now. And some of the signs I saw on that video reminded me I've seen those somewhere before. So I started asking Dan about these mystery glyphs, because I thought maybe I found the key. Maybe it's this lost language for this underground city that's in India or somewhere, right? So I asked Dan if he would do a video on the mystery glyphs, and he's going to tell us kind of what they are and how weird it is that they're actually here. So he knows everything about them.
Well, I wouldn't say everything. This would be my 33rd year in studying the Native American petroglyphs, okay? And, you know, you're going to find all kinds out there of people who think this and think that Native American petroglyphs are doodling. They're cowboy scribbling. It's information meant only for the author. And what I've found over the many years that I've been studying the glyphs is that it's definitely a writing system. Much of it's based off hand sign language. There's a lot of it that I won't go into detail, but the basics is pretty much your locator glyphs is what I call them. And this is why I find things that other people don't know about. I have a lot of, I've got over 30,000 photographs that I've taken over the years, and I've got people contacting me all the time saying, can you tell us where that is? Can you tell us where this is? And there's a lot of the sites I couldn't care less whether they knew where they were at or not. But there's other sites that, hell no, I'm not going to show them where it's at. Mainly because I believe I know what the site's all about. Well, it was in the very beginning of all of this that I met Terry Carter, and I went to talk to him about the Mystery Glyphs, as he termed them. If there's one thing that we know about those glyphs is that they are absolutely, without a doubt, Sioux or Ojibwa hieroglyphs.
Okay, so Sioux or Ojibwa hieroglyphs, and so why is that significant? So how many? Let's go back a little bit. How many states have we have people found these in?
Only here in the West.
So they're in the United States, but I think there's some I know there's some in Utah. I think there's some in Arizona.
We have Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, Wyoming, and California.
So just here in the West. So
yes, and where were the Sioux and the Ojibwa?
That's my next question: is where did this Indian tribe originate from? Where's most of their stuff at?
Well, you said originate, so let's take that out of there, because they originally came from this area, but we're talking way back. In a vague, connected way, they're related to my ancestors, which is the Lenape. The Lenape came from here. That was 700 AD. The Ojibwa and the Sioux are predominantly up in the northeast, but much further inland. Let's say up in, off the top of my head, I'd have to say in the central states, up near the Great Lakes and such.
So towards like Michigan and Wisconsin, up in there?
Probably, but it's something you'd want to look up.
Okay.
William Tompkins is the one that brought to my attention through his book that these are Sioux Ojibwa hieroglyphs, and it's kind of an interesting book to read through. He was communicating with a Sioux or Ojibwa chief. I can't remember which it was. And this chief would tell him what these hieroglyphs meant. And the reason I call them a hieroglyph is because the majority of them are not a symbol. It's a combination of symbols. The Sioux Ojibwa hieroglyph comes from the same root source as Native American petroglyphs, even Egyptian writing.
Really?
You might call it the simplest form.
Okay.
Okay. Sioux Ojibwa hieroglyphs obviously have a little more organization to them because they're single hieroglyphs.
Right.
But what people don't realize is that, like Egyptian writing, okay?
Okay.
These are not phonic sounds, okay?
So they're not like pronunciations.
They're sentences.
Right.
When you have if I had a notepad and such, I could show you some of this, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
So I'm going to put some of the pictures, I'll put the website down below. You can look at the glyphs that they found. They're not going to tell you where they're at, they'll just tell you what state they're in. But I'll put some of the pictures that Dan has of them on this video, and you guys can look at them towards the end, or I might pop them up here and there so you can see them. So You kind of know what he's talking about. Then
Well,
he doesn't have to write them out.
You want to put a link to my blog site also. I've got a couple articles on there that have to do with reading the Native American petroglyphs. And I'm going to tell you all right now, consider it a hypothesis, okay? Because anybody and everybody, I don't care what their education is, anybody can be wrong.
This is true. You guys watch my videos, you know this.
But back to the mystery glyphs.
Right.
You're familiar with the one that looks like a square box and then it goes inward like a square spiral.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It has the exact same meaning in the Egyptian writing. It's a dwelling.
Okay.
Have you seen the one that looks like a stick figure but with no body, no torso, no head? It just shows the legs and 2 feet sticking out.
Yes.
Looks like it's walking.
Yes.
It means, the best base meaning I could give it, and I'll explain base meaning in a minute, is commencing, attempting, beginning.
That makes
Okay?
sense.
The subject will tell you the correct derivative word to insert. You got to know the subject of the panel.
Okay.
Now that's a big problem with the mystery glyphs, is we don't know what the subject is.
Ah.
We suspect what the subject is.
Right.
And the biggest thing about the mystery glyphs is, and it's well pointed out, that they're fairly modern. Okay, I admit it, they're not ancient.
So modern as far as, like, how old? Like 1700s?
Probably in the
18?
last 120 to 150 years.
Okay.
Okay, a tool was definitely used, something very similar to a chisel, but
So these aren't painted on, they're actually engraved in
Right.
stone.
But the biggest question is, who was here in the West carving these panels 150 years ago, 120 years ago? Who would have been doing that was of the Sioux or Ojibwa relationship? I mean, who?
That's very interesting.
There's only one thing that comes up.
What's the one thing that comes up, Dan?
Well, if you go to the blog site, tuscoro.com,
I'll put a link in the description below.
I have republished some books, and one of those books is nicknamed The Black Book.
The Black Book. If you
Jesse James was one of his names.
guys, and I have the Black Book. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but it's a must read.
Now, someone sent me that book, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and they said, Dan, why don't you take this book and do your thing. Prove it or disprove
Do
it.
your thing.
And I thought, damn, this sounds like fun, because I like Jesse James.
Yes.
He was a rebel.
Jesse James is awesome.
And the more I read through the book, I realized the magnitude of what I had agreed to. And what I do is I take various claims from the book that I can see is provable or able to disprove, and try to find the evidences to back it up or to disprove it. To this day, I've never been able to disprove anything in that book. I have been able to prove many of the claims that were made in that book, and others are sitting in limbo because I can't find evidence one way or the other.
So, one of the things that we can prove in the book, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is the Knights of the Golden Circle play a role in this.
Probably. You see, two of Jesse James's best men, colleagues during that nasty war, were Sioux Indians.
So Jesse James was friends with the Sioux Indians during the Civil War.
Yes.
Okay.
Which was how many years ago?
Well, it's been a while.
About 160 years ago. But the operations carried on for many years after the Civil War. I mean, the majority of the head individuals involved with the KGC, and I like to call them the Confederate Underground, because this KGC thing, even though it's quite real, it just seems way too James Bondish for me. But there are many other organizations within the Confederacy. KGC is just one of them, Knights of the Golden Circle.
And that's a real thing. You can look them up. They even have a book that you can...
Unless, of course, you're reading Wiki and other places.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. You want to go and look for the... I'll put a link, or I'll tell you the name in the description of the book that I'm talking about, and it's kind of like how you get initiated, kind of some of their things they did, and it's kind of like a Masons, like a different sect of the Masons, right? The
I'm trying to think of what book you're talking about.
So, not to get off subject here, this is kind of interesting though. So remember when you found the carvings in the rocks, the hooked J?
That what?
The hooked J?
Yeah.
So we spent like a couple of weeks on that.
The back-to-back J.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we spent a couple of weeks on that, and it's like a cipher carved in a rock, and I won't post it. Dan probably has a picture of it on his site. But we decided that the Roman numerals and all the things that were on there, we and Dan thought, well, maybe it's a code that references pages and paragraphs in this book. So it's like their Bible that you sent me, that huge PDF of that full book. Do you remember that?
No.
Great. But anyway,
I'm getting old.
I know you're getting old. That's why we're here to do this, so the world never forgets what Dan knows. But that book is kind of like, it tells you the steps and kind of the rules of thumb. It's kind of like their Bible. And so Dan probably, he doesn't remember obviously, but I'll put the link in there and you can read it. If
it's the book I'm thinking about, I mean, it has kind of gone down in history as the KGC Bible, but if it's the book I'm thinking about, when I read it, I don't think the guy knew his ass from a hole in the ground.
Anyway, we went down a rabbit hole.
Can we say that on camera?
I guess you can. But we went down the rabbit hole, but they're real. It was a real group of guys, and they were kind of like the Freemasons, and you can even find news articles where they found KGC caches.
We really don't want to get into it here, but you have to understand that the Civil War, everything you know about the Civil War, that you've been taught about the Civil War, is virtually backwards from what it actually was.
I've read some books. I'll post them in the description below if you want to read them.
I wrote a book also, and it's a short assessment of the Black Book, and it's called Death of the Republic. You can find that on Tuscoro.com. Look for the books for sale part, scroll down through the books, and you'll see it.
If you get that book, get the Black Book too, because when the Black Book first came out, Dan will tell you, it was extremely expensive.
No, $500.
$500.
I've seen it as high as $1,000.
And when Dan republished it, it's super affordable. But if you get both of them, because they kind of work together, like you can get a bigger picture if you read both of them, then you can kind of put some pieces together. But we bring up the KGC because of these mystery glyphs, right? So, is that where we're going?
Well, let's rewind a little bit. In order for, the die-hard researchers, if you really want to understand what the mystery glyphs are all about, then you might want to start with learning what the Native American petroglyphs are really all about. And my personal opinion, based upon God knows how many weeks I spent at the universities trying to find anybody from the academics that knew something about the Native American petroglyphs, I come to find out that everybody that should know doesn't. I did find one book And I bought it, and I spent probably the next 10 years trying to prove or disprove him. And I've never been able to disprove him. The book's called The Rocks Begin to Speak by Lavan Martineau. And it's a fairly inexpensive book. You would also want to get William Tompkins' book. Can't remember the title, something Native American Petroglyphs or Indian Writings. The interesting thing in Tompkins' books is they're using the same glyphs with mild differences in some of them, but they're using the same glyphs that you see in the Mystery Glyph panels.
There are pictures of them in those books.
Now, the chief told the guy, I think it was William, he told him what the glyphs mean. He didn't tell him why. See, subject matter changes the words that you would use to describe the glyph.
Okay.
It'll have the same concept, such as the one I mentioned with the two legs spread apart, commencing, attempting,
starting.
I'm just thinking of synonyms, you know.
Right.
Beginning. And it just depends on what the subject of the panel is as to which one would best fit. And that's the way these glyphs work. Now, in the Black Book, Jesse James was asked once about the petroglyphs or the signs and symbols that he used at these depository sites. Not their cache sites, depository sites, okay? And they asked him if he still remembered them, and he says, well, of course I do. He says they're often mistaken for Native American petroglyphs.
Ta-da.
Two of his key individuals being Sioux Indians. In one particular time frame, he was married to a Sioux. The Native American people, the Mexican, and the African people were some of Jesse's favorite people. Those are the people he watched out for. Does that make any sense, knowing what you think you know about the Civil War?
No.
It was all about slavery. But there was another comment made in the Black Book when, I can't remember what was said, but Jesse said these depositories are all over the West. Now, during the Civil War, you'd think they'd be somewhere over on the other side of the Mississippi.
Right, because Jesse James was from
Kansas.
So, back in there somewhere.
Missouri.
Missouri.
He was born in Kansas, I think. No, Kentucky. Hell, I don't know.
We're just making this up
I'm
as we
getting
go.
old.
We just make this up.
Yeah, I'm making this up as I go.
Read the Black Book, it's in there.
That's why we do these interviews, because I can make it up quickly. But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting statement. These depositories are all over the West. Now, the interesting thing is, if
the camera went weird, so we were talking about depositories all over the West that Jesse James was.
right, in the book, he said that these depositories are all over the West, and so I'm thinking, well, shouldn't they be on the other side of the Mississippi? I mean, I can see Texas, because a lot of the people from the KGC went to Texas after the Civil War. Jesse actually lived out many of his years down in Texas, clear up till 1925, when he killed off one of his other aliases, one of his primary aliases. And I think I'll hold that one for now. If you want to know later, I'll tell you. Even got some pictures of him. And recently somebody sent me a photo, and usually I just shake my head when somebody sends me a photo, because I just know it's not going to be Jesse. This one just floored me. Anyway, back to the Mystery Glyphs. and I think we talked about this before the camera freaked out.
I'm not a filmmaker, they know that. But we were talking, I think, about different colors and if they're pecked.
Let's back up a little bit. We need to understand that the Native American petroglyphs are predominantly modeled after hand sign language, okay? There is a lot more to it. The hieroglyphs that are used by the Sioux and the Ojibwa, they're a step up from the Native American petroglyphs. They actually have rules, and they've combined the symbols to make it a hieroglyph. Now these hieroglyphs will have a base meaning, like the one I told you about, where it shows the two legs and the feet, which means the base meaning would be commencing or attempting, beginning. But you have to find the subject of the panel in order to attribute the correct derivative word.
Makes sense.
The box, the one that looks like a square spiral, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's a dwelling. It's a man-made place. A square box, the base meaning for it, the best base meaning I can come up with, is a man-made place. Okay, a circle has a very simple base meaning. It means holding, or any derivative. It could be the sky, with the outside line representing the horizon. It could be a lake. It could be a hole in the ground. Any word that can be exchanged as a derivative to holding
Gotcha.
makes a complete round. Now you was talking about...
so the ones we found are carved. They're carved with a tool.
right.
And the ones that I've seen are they're either like sometimes they're pecked on and sometimes they're painted on. But before we lost the deal there, you were saying that the way that they're put onto the stone actually has a meaning, right?
No, we actually didn't talk specifically about that, but there is
Well,
what's called rock incorporation.
Well, you were saying like, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I was thinking more like, so you said that if they're pecked in, they're petroglyphs.
Okay, anything that's pecked on is a petroglyph. I don't care if it's scratched and it's modern, it's still a petroglyph. Painted, especially red, just remember red is dead. Okay, red paintings, pictographs have nothing to do with the living. It's a spiritual concept. It's something that was either once a part of this material world or never has been a part of this material world. It's a spiritual concept. For example, let's take a straight line. A straight line, its base meaning is go or trail. Okay, do you see how the two can be synonymous?
Right.
If it's red, it's a spiritual path. You follow?
Yep.
And they're not, it isn't that easy to read them. I mean, I've got panels that I've been looking at for 30 some odd years and I still have no idea what they're about.
Will you go make sure that's still recording? That's going to be their job, to walk behind the camera and make sure it's still running.
Yeah. Should have a red dot on the top right.
Yep,
Right?
red dot, counter.
So, was we,
And white means something different too, because I've seen some white
yeah,
ones.
your colors have different meanings, and one of them I'll tell is white. It means purity.
So question, because most of the white ones that I've seen have been on TV, and there's a lot of them in Australia. The Aborigines in Australia use a lot of white. Is it the same thing?
Yeah, it's worldwide.
Okay, so this is the
Well, you think about it. When's the first time that you would have needed a hand sign language in order to communicate with other people? When did that happen?
I guess at the beginning, because that'd be the first thing, right?
Well, you have to be a Bible thumper in order to know this. And if you don't believe in the Bible, I don't care. If you don't believe in a God, I don't care. But the first time would be at the confusion of tongues, because prior to that, everyone spoke the same language. You had no need for a hand sign language system, unless we had an incredibly large amount of deaf people in a certain area back then.
So it's a universal language. We've got that. So these glyphs were made, like we mentioned before, modern. They're more modern. They were carved in with a steel tool, and they're hidden in different spots. And one of the names you said that Jesse James ran under, I don't know if this is on there before or not, was Clark, right?
William A. Clark.
And Dan has been able to find where these petroglyphs are, the name.
The Mystery Glyph sites, there's over 30 of them now. And I can put William A. Clark in every single location. They're always near a mining area, a railroad, with one exception.
And they're all out west.
Yeah, and
So if you guys find them, like, I don't know if this was in there before either, but you can let Dan know if you find something similar or you're interested, and he'll tell you what you have or what you don't have. And if it pertains to this, then there's people actually doing research, correct, on these to locate
not really.
them? Or?
It's pretty much me and Terry, and there's one other guy that has some pretty out there theories.
And then there's my theories that don't matter at all, because I go way down the rabbit hole.
It doesn't matter what anybody says. Anybody can be wrong. I can be wrong.
And you can be right. So if you see something at the end of this video that you think you recognize and you've seen somewhere before, let Dan know, and he can put it in the recipe and see whatever we can make.
Yeah, I've been wrong before, but I then realized I'd made a mistake.
I let him know he was wrong a few times, I think. I think I was right twice.
But I don't know how much of that we missed. But
so yeah, the glyphs they're an interesting sort.
Here's the problem that we're running into with the mystery glyphs. I mean, Terry's been after me for a long time to sit down and go through each of the hieroglyphs and give my best interpretation of that particular hieroglyph. Okay, keep in mind, I call them hieroglyphs because it's not a symbol. It's a combination of symbols. Okay? Some of them are simple enough that, yes, it could be considered a symbol. The problem we're running into is everybody and their dog back 100 years ago knew the Native American hand sign language. There was a lot of people that knew it. And so if these panels that we're finding are some kind of instruction to do something, how do we know that those hieroglyphs haven't been systematically shuffled? You know what I mean?
To mix up the
We don't
universal
know.
language, right? Right, I get you.
See, think of this as code talking.
Code talking with
You've heard of the
hieroglyphs.
Navajo in World War II,
Yes.
and then we had, I think it was the Hopi in World War I. Well, in the Civil War, they used code talking also, but that was primarily the Confederacy.
So what they did is they took a known language and scrambled it to make it something that you couldn't really, you could try to figure out if you knew. I mean, all the clues are there. You just need to know what order they go in.
Exactly. You know, I
And
can't
each
remember.
one might reference to another one. Or it might
Possibly.
just reference to one of these.
Anything's possible.
So that's
I mean,
why they're
20
a mystery.
20 some odd years ago, I met Bob Brewer. If you don't know who Bob Brewer is, he's supposedly one of the top dogs when it comes to KGC. But I remember he got after Terry once because Terry was posting those mystery glyphs online. And Bob says, you need to get those off the internet. That's KGC writing. And, you know, back then I would have laughed my butt off. And here we are 20 some odd years later, and I'm saying kind of the same thing.
Take them off the internet, or that's what they are.
That's what they are.
So we can show them at the end of the video.
I don't think anybody can come up with a better analogy as to what they are. There's no question that they're fairly recent, and, you know, I mean 120, 150 years.
And they're such, when you see them, they're very precise. They're not like weathered down and you got to get the paper out. And
from
figure
site to
'em out.
site, you would swear that the same individual carved them.
And
I
just-
don't know that the same individual did carve them, but if not, they had a very strict method by which they followed to carve these, because they looked like they were carved by the same individual. And whether that was Jesse or another operative of the Confederacy or one of the Sioux
So
Indians,
I know
don't
you can't tell us exactly where they are, but would it, like, to tell if it's the same person, would it be like a certain height that they're carved on, like at eye level, or is
They're
it just,
usually,
can you tell their handwriting, or
no, I wouldn't say that you could tell a handwriting, but they're usually about eye level, you know, right in front of you. They're never in an easy place to find. These, I mean, if this was a hoax, okay, I love these people that say, oh, the Mormons did it, you know, to promote their religion. That is the stupidest, laziest
now we've made,
research comment I've ever heard.
now he's mad. But yeah, if it's a hoax, it's a very elaborate one because it's different states using language not from this area.
They are never in an easy place to find.
And you would never waste your time to do that, to just make something up, because that would take forever.
It would.
I mean, that's a waste of time.
But they're always near mine sites, railroads. I can't think of anything else that they could be, if not these depository sites. I mean, I don't know how many depository sites there were. I mean, most people don't even know there were depository sites, because they watch these shows like Curse of the Civil War Gold. They made it sound like, what was his name that they captured, and I can't remember, but anyway, they made it sound like that was the entire wealth of the Confederacy that the Union generals captured. And that wasn't a drop in the bucket.
Wow. So, guys, I'll put these up at the end of the video. And you guys, I'll put them up there and I'll leave them up there long enough that if you want to pause it, you can look at them and write them down or copy them or take a picture with your phone. Plus, I'll put the website in there and Dan's website, and I'll put Terry Carter's website, YouTube channel in there. You can go check him out. Terry does great interviews. He's got a plethora of knowledge. I'm actually in one of his videos with you, aren't I?
Are you getting killed by smoke also?
Well, no, I thought you were sucking it through a filter.
No, that's the other one.
Oh. But I was in a video with Dan and Terry. When I first met Terry, we went down south and we did turtle monuments.
Yeah.
And my wife is in that video. I don't know what Terry ever called it because I never did watch it. But you can go on his channel and search that up and you'll see me as a junior treasure hunter starting to enter the realm of Dan. And Dan is very trustworthy. So if you guys have questions or things that you found, you want to know what they are, he won't tell anybody. If it's like a huge cache site and everything, I don't even think he charges. I think like the common rule is like 5 to 10% or whatever you want to give him. But if you want him to figure out whatever you guys have, Dan researches like crazy. This guy has got more research on stuff around here that's insane. When I first met Dan, I was looking for maps online and I found his website and I sent him an email and I told him what I was looking for and he said, well, you need to call me. So I called Dan. I think we talked for 3 hours. And then I ended up coming to his house with John, and we bought a whole bunch of maps, and Dan gave us a bunch of free advice and stuff. And then Dan wanted to test us out, so he sent us on some projects, and we passed the test. So then we got into...
Keep in mind, they didn't know they were being tested.
No. I think the first one he sent us on was just like, I want to see if they'll even climb that. And we did. But
Yeah, you did.
you get and I have found some stuff. The rail cars video, if you want to go see that one, I found those for Dan, and there's some other things I've found for Dan that we don't videotape or talk about, but he's very trustworthy. So if you guys really do have questions, he'll answer them. And he's not going to charge you if you send him a picture of a petroglyph and he's like, well, this leads to water. In fact, I don't think Dan has ever charged me again for anything.
Let me interject there. If you have some petroglyphs and you want to know what they mean, please do not send them to me. I don't do that. In order for me to understand what a panel means, I have to know where it is. I have to stand there in front of it. I've got to know something about the area, what the history is there, and so forth. So don't do that. I had one friend that sent me a photo once, but because I knew him so well, I humored him. And he says, tell me what you think this means. I said, okay, by looking at the petroglyph, I would say that there's a trail on the left side, and it goes up a ridge. You're probably in a gully. And if you follow that trail up to the first set of ledges and turn to the right, you're going to find some ruins. He immediately calls me and says, how the hell did you do that? I said, what are you talking about? And he says, you just described exactly where that site is and what's up above it.
And you just told everyone how good you are, and you think they're not going to email you now? Don't flood his email.
And please, if you're one of those people that believes that you're related to Jesse James and you've got all these family photos and so forth that you want to show me to prove that this is Jesse James, go ahead and send the photos, but don't do it if you're already convinced. Okay? If you're already convinced, great. You're a relative of Jesse James. But
Dan's very busy.
I'm not, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
He's very honest. That's why he's not going to do my lineage, because I don't want to know. I'd rather
Not gonna what?
do my genealogy, because I'd rather you sugarcoat it and be like, oh, you're related to all these great people, instead of the truth.
You'd be surprised who you're related to.
I'm probably related to Dan, so I should be in the will to get all this information. But, so don't email him, but go check out his page.
You can email me if you've got a good reason to email me.
I'll let Dan tell you yay or nay whenever you guys do. It's his email. But those books, the Black Book and what's the Confederacy book? The
Death of the Republic.
Death of the Republic.
If you want to know what the Civil War was really all about, that book will give you a pretty good idea.
And I'll put another reference in there, some other books. It gets into a lot of the politics and things, but so I guess we can end it here. But thanks, Dan, for sharing with my guys on the channel. I've been telling them we were going to do an interview for a long time, and we just have never had time to get with each other. I've been working on some other projects with some of your other people, and it's just been kind of hard to get up here.
Well,
Dan, rather I'm out digging and looking than sitting here in his front yard.
Keep up your videos, because I think you do a pretty dang good job. I think you're a natural narrator. You know, it doesn't come across as corny. Although I know certain things about you, so I get a chuckle every now and
Yeah,
then.
I throw some stuff in there only Dan knows about. But I'm sure some of my viewers think it's corny, so, but I don't care. But Dan also said we could take this cannonball and have the steel tested to see if they can date it, age it, tell what the other minerals there are in it, and maybe I'll find if I can.
You might be able to get some information to tell you when it was made.
But Dan thinks it's a cannonball. I think it's a cannonball. Dan has seen cannonballs, so bucket lister, guys. Cannonball. Cannonball. I know a guy out there who's not going to watch this video unless I tell him, but I'm going to just do this anyway. Where's your cannonball?
Well, I'm certainly not the the expert on cannonballs. I mean, just apply some common sense.
That's my whole channel. I'm an
If
idiot.
it was a mill ball, it would be perfectly round.
And it's not.
And I don't think it could sit in the ground long enough to take the odd shape that it has. I don't think we have that much time. I mean, you might, if we go back to the Jurassic period, maybe.
This was made by a caveman. But no, I'm going to call it a cannonball. I'll probably get it tested eventually. If I ever do, I'll put a little 5-minute video up on there saying, yeah, that's what it is.
Or remind me, I have some other sites for you to go.
And then, yeah,
check
so
out.
I have to stay here for another little bit and get updated on a lot of other stuff that I'm supposed to go do. And I'm excited for that. I really am, because it's getting cold. And Arizona sounds like a really nice place to go right now.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Because it was 21 degrees driving up here today. And now it's, I mean, that's probably what, I don't know, the fire's nice, but it's probably only 35, 40. But I like to thanks
It
Dan,
might get
because
50 today.
because without Dan, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't do videos, and I wouldn't have the confidence to go do stuff. And I've learned a ton from Dan. Dan will tell me I'm wrong and just be quiet, and then he'll tell me you missed that. Go back and look at it because it's there. And that's some of his tests: is go out here and tell me what you see, and you come back and you report what you see. And if it's not all on his list, you got to do it over. But I found it. I found the monument he sent me out there to find.
Which one was that?
I can't say it on camera.
You can use a code word that I will understand.
There's two of them on the left-hand side of the road, headed north into a creek.
Ah. Well, that's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, I didn't know they were there. You just said drive out there. But I found them, and then I called Dan, and I was doing backflips on the hood of the truck because I found him. He's like, yeah, well, that's kind of why I sent you out there, and he rained on my parade.
I just got report of a new one yesterday.
Mine's not the newest now.
No, it's not out there.
Mine, the one I found.
No, it's definitely not the newest. There's been a few since.
Well, at least I was the newest for a little while, because Dan had never...
The one that you found out there in the West Desert is definitely one of the better ones. But there's been a couple of them that's come up since, and more of them down south.
So we'll probably talk
And I
about
think
that.
you're on the same trail. The ones down south, I have yet to get good images of them. The other two, a friend of mine was going to go fly a drone, and he looked up at the mountaintop and said, "Oh, to hell with this," and he just took off straight up the side of this damn steep mountain, a half a mile, and went and photographed it up close.
That's what John does. If he ever comes back, that's John's duty. Because John can out hike me. He's older, but he can hike. You guys hear me breathing? I struggle. But I don't sugarcoat anything out in my videos either. You guys get what you get, and I appreciate everyone who subscribes. I appreciate every one of your comments. I try to get back to every one of you, because that's what makes this even funner, is hearing what you guys have to say, and where you guys see stuff that I miss, and you tell me the timeline and go back and look, and sure enough, I miss stuff too, because while I'm filming, it's really hard to keep looking for things. That's usually why I find things, then film, because it's hard. But while I'm filming and I'm doing my thing, you guys pick stuff up all the time, and I appreciate it. So subscribe, share. I hope you guys all have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holidays. I do have another video coming. I'm on vacation, like I said, so I have the rest of this week off. So I'm going to go out and do some serious hiking, and I was thinking about doing a camping trip, but my neck is kind of being weird. But we might do that. I might do an overnighter to get all this stuff in and get it in 2 days. But my 2 days will probably be a 45-minute video. But thanks again, Dan. I appreciate it. I love you, buddy. And I'll see you guys on the next video, and I hope you guys enjoyed what Dan had to talk about. And let us know what you think of the mystery glyphs. They'll be at the end of this video. Thanks.